I'm Holly Hager, taking you inside art.
So this is something that I grew up with because I had painting and calligraphy lessons every Saturday since I was 3. My dad is very passionate about traditional Chinese painting and calligraphy and started collecting ink sticks. So this is a 2-part mold of my leg. If you can see, nice in 2 parts. This white plaster part is just a mother mold, meaning that it's just there to reinforce the actual silicone that is the carbon like a copy of my leg. I was very drawn to make body parts out of ink as my first. That was my first motivation in the first place with the ink sticks. It's like, well, if it could be a stick, it can be a leg. And so I got this leg made. And so here, when you come over here, you'll see the leg. So while I was going through all these challenges, like technical challenges, I just kept thinking, like, I just want to be made of ink.
What kind of ink is it?
It is using a very primitive method of making ink that originates from China.
So it's the soot and the glue combined to make ink.
That was it. That made the first inks. Like, for instance, this was one of my first ones, okay? It was literally really sticky stuff that I formed into somewhat of a stick. And now with this dried, I can just add water, grind it against any kind of a stone, and make ink. Here is here's a sheet of ink that basically was one of the earlier pieces of ink that I laid out flat, and when I got back to it, it had folded completely in half. And so when I looked at it, I thought of Dali's melting clock, and so I thought to lay it over this neon tube, kind of like a reference to memory and your own kind of sense of time, and I think that's very relevant to this material because it has a lot to do with my childhood and history and cultural history and family. These are some that my dad had collected over the years. He kind of gave me the ones that aren't worth much and kept the ones that are. And because he paints now. He paints and he loves to do calligraphy, and he will use ink sticks from the Ming Dynasty because they say it's the most beautiful. I'd like to kind of revisit this material and find another way to kind of represent it, and in a sense almost, and I kind of like to see it as like a rejection of form and history by turning into something of my own, because technically what I'm doing with it, with like the leg and sculpting, making the panties and doing the sculptural work with the ink that I'm making from scratch, it's organic and actually in flux. It's very fragile, and it's always changing, and it's very sensitive to the elements, meaning that if it were at a high temperature or in water, it would turn to liquid. And so the idea is that, even in the form that it's not even in its finite form the way I make it, so it's always changing.
Which is all about what making art is, right? Is to find your own way of seeing it so that you can show us the way that you see it. Ask the Collector with Holly Hager on Art Zealous. Learn more on Curacious, art without the BS.